In the 3rd year of our marriage, the pretty little sparrow my husband kept outside finally showed up in front of me. The young girl looked panicked when she saw me, like a clueless princess straight out of a fairy tale. I took a sip of soup and calmly invited her out the door. Upstairs, Sam leaned against the railing, strolling down slowly. When his eyes met mine, he smiled with indifference. "Ruby, maybe you should give it a try too. Young and pretty really does feel different." I knew he was just mocking me. He always enjoyed grinding other people's dignity beneath his feet, so I only lowered my eyes and smiled quietly. Sam didn't know. I played the game better than he ever could. I hooked up with a crown prince of the Beijing elite circle. Chapter 1. When I came back from a dinner party, I heard the clatter of pots and pans in the kitchen. The bedroom light on the 2nd floor was still on. Sam and I had been married for 3 years, and he had never once stepped foot in the kitchen. The maid would have left hours ago. I paused, then headed toward the kitchen. I wasn't surprised when I saw the young girl moving about inside. It wasn't until I got closer that I caught the scent of hangover soup. She looked to be just over 20, pretty like a magnolia blossom. The nightgown she wore didn't fit, dragging on the floor, and the apron around her waist was clumsily untied. She must have heard me approaching because she smiled and said, "Sam, come help me tie this." I obliged. Stepping forward, I picked up the dangling straps and tied them into a neat bow. She turned around with a smile. "Didn't I tell you to?" Her words cut off as her eyes met mine. The porcelain spoon in her hand fell to the marble floor, shattered, a sharp shard grazing the top of my foot. Her face went pale. She stammered, "Miss Ruby." My eyes dropped to her neck and shoulder. A trail of red marks plainly revealed just how good my husband's mood had been earlier. I smiled gently and asked, "Hangover soup? Could you spare me some?" Chapter 2. I can't quite remember when my marriage with Sam started to rot. The first woman who came knocking was his former secretary. She caught me completely off guard. When I opened the door, I saw her entangled with Sam on the couch we had picked out together. Only when I looked over did she feign surprise and jump away. Her acting was so bad she could have been blacklisted from showbiz for 50 years. I knew Sam was dead drunk that day. I also knew she was just betting big while he was unconscious. She got fired. No surprise there. I have a good memory. I recognized Amanda right away, a girl I'd seen 4 months ago. It was raining hard that day. I drove to Sam's company and saw him lift her into his arms, his assistant holding an umbrella for them both. He gently placed her in the car. The whole scene looked like something straight out of a romance drama. I took a sip of the hangover soup. Not too salty, not too bland. Amanda stood beside the table, hands clasped tightly, her fingers white at the knuckles. "It's late," I said, startled like a rabbit. She looked up. "I'll go now." Miss Ruby, obedient, considerate, knows when to retreat. No wonder Sam's kept her around this long. She didn't ask to go upstairs to check on him, didn't mention wanting to change clothes, just grabbed her phone and headed for the door. Halfway there, she turned back. "Miss Ruby, the soup, please remind Sam to drink it. Otherwise, his head will hurt in the morning." I nodded. The moment the door closed, footsteps sounded from upstairs. Sam emerged from the bedroom, his shirt hanging loose, buttons undone, his chest on full display. I looked at him once, then calmly looked away. "You heard her," I said. "No need for me to remind you." He nodded and slowly descended the stairs. It had been a long time since Sam and I faced each other like this. He had a parade of women around him. Even if you lined them up, I wouldn't even make the list. Our marriage was barely holding together. "Ruby." He called my name softly. His voice was gentle. I looked up. He smiled at me. "Maybe you should try it too," he said. Young women really are different. Chapter 3. I looked at his calm, indifferent face and suddenly recalled our wedding day. Everyone was smiling, congratulating us on our everlasting love. Only my best friend, helping me with my dress in the dressing room, remained expressionless the entire time. As the staff called me to walk down the aisle, she gently tucked a lock of hair behind my ear and said softly, "Ruby, welcome to the mire. Marriage into wealth is more of a transaction." On paper, my marriage to Sam looked like a picture-perfect arrangement. Passers-by would marvel at how ideal we were for each other. No one cared about what kind of cheap material was hidden beneath the polished surface. Under the veil of wealth and power, sincerity meant almost nothing. What I didn't expect was that it would be my husband encouraging me to cheat first. Chapter 4. My phone buzzed on the table. I looked down and saw a message from the young man. Sam sat across from me. I stood up and wiped my mouth with a napkin. Something came up. I'm heading out. He replied blandly. Okay. There were few cars on the road this late at night. I reached Zach's location with no traffic. There were still quite a few cars parked outside the bar. A small group of young people chatted nearby. Under the streetlight, I easily spotted Zach. Tall, broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted, the white light softened his features but couldn't hide his good looks. I parked and walked over. Zach. He looked up, but before he could respond, a girl stepped between us. The heavy stench of alcohol made me frown. She shoved me with considerable force and sneered. Hey, who are you? Still hitting on younger guys at your age? I was only 25, but after years in high society, I carried a sharp, guarded air that distinguished me from sheltered students. She gave me a once-over and scoffed. You really think Zach would go for some old woman like you? Before I could respond, Zach grabbed her wrist. The girl winced from the pain, her drunkenness fading a bit. Zach, she's my senior, he said, his tone cool in the night air. The girl froze and then muttered an apology. Sorry. I didn't. My social life doesn't need your input. We're not that close. Classmate. He let go and added coldly. Maybe you need someone to teach you some manners. She looked devastated. I could practically hear her heart breaking. TSK. Poor thing. Chapter 5. I met Zach in a bar too. The first time one of Sam's scandals blew up. It ended up affecting both of us. The company's stock price took a hit, and I had to clean up his mess with PR. Frustrated, I went to a bar alone. The place was packed. The bartender joked. Maybe a prince on a white horse will show up to save you. I shrugged it off and headed to the restroom. Coming out, I happened upon a confession scene in the hallway. Over the blaring music, I heard a girl shout with all her might, I really like you. Will you be my boyfriend? I couldn't catch the guy's response and peeked around the corner out of curiosity. The girl bolted away, head down. Then the guy turned, and I saw his face clearly. Zach. A real deal prince born with a diamond spoon in his mouth. My business instincts kicked in instantly. I stepped forward and tapped his shoulder. Young master, I'm not like those other girls. I'm a married woman. Zach visibly froze. Chapter 6. A prince doesn't just save damsels in distress. He can also patch up a married woman's broken heart. Especially if working with his family means billion-dollar deals, then yeah, it's worth a shot. Pleasing the heir of a noble family is way easier than buttering up old, scheming businessmen. Since graduating, I shamelessly leaned on my professor's network, claiming to be Zach's senior, showing concern for my junior. Back in the day, I was great at winning over women, teachers, classmates, aunties, you name it. Soft-hearted women always melted. But Zach was immune. He deflected every attempt at flirtation, masking all my advances under the dignified title of senior and junior. Just like tonight, I came to pick him up from a bar because I cared for my junior. Chapter 7. By the time I started the car, Zach was already in the passenger seat. Thanks for the trouble. I leaned over, pulled down the seatbelt above him, and buckled it for him. He held his breath, inhaling sharply, then fell silent. I could almost smell the faint scent of alcohol lingering on him. When I looked up, our noses were nearly touching. I teased him. Why'd you stop talking? Zach nearly jumped out of his seat, quickly pushing me away. Too close. The young lord's ears flushed bright red. He looked just like a long-haired ragdoll cat puffed up in winter. Ruby, can you not talk like that? I leaned back against the driver's seat, turned the wheel, and replied seriously. You stepped in for an old woman like me. I can only repay you with myself. Ruby. The ragdoll fluffed up again. MHM. I responded calmly. What are your orders, young master? He frowned. The young lord shut up. The young lord sulked. After a long moment, I heard him mutter. You're not old. Then should I still repay you with myself? Silence from the passenger seat. When the red light turned green, I glanced at Zach. He was leaning on his hand, eyes half-lidded, staring at my hand. The diamond ring on my ring finger sparkled brilliantly. An obvious wedding ring. Sam's had long been lost. Who knew where? I was the only one still wearing mine. Most people in our circle didn't wear wedding rings. Love and loyalty had nothing to do with our hollow marriages. So naturally, I was seen as an outlier. At first, they joked Sam would become a henpecked husband, but I never made a fuss. So later, they envied him, saying he was lucky to find a wife who loved him that much. Loved him so much, she tolerated the other women too. Just as the yellow light turned green, I heard Zach's calm voice. I don't date married women. Chapter 8. The next day, I ran into my friend Elise at an auction. She glanced at the dark circles under my eyes and said bluntly, "So, you finally found someone? Still, take care of yourself." "No, I just spent half the night being someone's chauffeur." Elise looked me up and down thoughtfully. "I get the feeling, the young lord's pretty high level." I didn't respond. I had my eyes on a ruby necklace being auctioned today. I planned to secure it and deliver it to a certain wealthy lady tomorrow. Knowing how to charm and please is a basic skill for any competent businesswoman. That was the only reason I came today. On stage, the staff brought out the final treasure of the day. The intricate and luxurious necklace gleamed under the lights. I wasn't listening to the introduction. As soon as the starting price was announced, I raised my paddle. The auctioneer called my bid. Someone immediately offered higher. The prices climbed bit by bit. 3 million, 3.2 million, 3.5 million. I considered for a moment, then raised my paddle again. 3.8 million. No one answered. Any other bids? 3.8 million. Once. 3.8 million. Twice. 4 million. A sudden voice interrupted the auctioneer. I instinctively looked toward the source. Sam was seated with his paddle still raised. One arm wrapped around a young woman as he smiled at me. Amanda shrank further into his arms when she saw me looking. I looked away. 4.2 million. 4.3 million. 4.4. 4.5. It was like Sam was deliberately competing with me. Everyone else kept quiet, watching the drama of a wealthy couple falling apart. I was getting a headache and stood to walk over to Sam. "I thought you weren't into collecting jewelry." He smirked. "Just suddenly thought that necklace would look great on Amanda." I looked at Amanda. She met my gaze and bit her lip. Eyes red. "Miss Ruby, that necklace, it's really beautiful." Sam shrugged, his peach blossom eyes gleaming with mischief. I nearly lost control of the composure I'd maintained for years. Sam loved watching women fight over him, especially me. The women around him came and went, all with their own ways of provoking me. The only time I ever lost my cool was 2 years ago, when I slapped one of them. I don't even remember her face clearly, only that Sam looked delighted when he saw me angry. He grabbed my hand, the one I used to slap her, and gently stroked it. His tone indulgent. "Ruby, if she upset you, just tell me. There's no need to dirty your hands." Chapter 9. I didn't say another word and got up to leave. Inside the hall, the auctioneer dropped the gavel, sealing the necklace's fate. I stood at the door and watched as the staff guided Sam and Amanda to make the payment. At the moment Sam handed over his card, my mood suddenly improved. I looked down and sent a message to a contact marked AAA, Beijing Circles Prince Zach. "Where are you?" Zach replied quickly, "Lab." I checked the time, then asked, "You skipped dinner again, didn't you?" The typing indicator flickered for a while, but no message came through. So I followed up myself. "Private kitchen. Wait for me. I'll be at the school gate in about 40 minutes. When I put away my phone, Elise glanced at me. "Delivering dinner to the young prince today?" I nodded. She hesitated, clearly wanting to say something. I smiled. "Elise," I said, "I'm a businesswoman." Chapter 10. My timing was perfect. Zach stood by the school gate like a well-trained sentry, a little stiff, slightly adorable. I pulled up in front of him, rolled down the window, and handed him the food from the passenger seat. "Thanks," he said softly. I looked up, ready to tease him, and then I saw 2 familiar figures not far away. What a small world. Turns out my husband's little flower was a top student too. The necklace Sam had just bought was already hanging around Amanda's neck. Even in the dim light, it was hard to ignore its beauty. Jewelry is meant to enhance the wearer. But the young girl was too raw, too green to carry off something so opulent. Instead, she became the accessory to the necklace. My idiot husband. In her early 20s, blooming like a flower, she needed no decoration to be stunning. Zach followed my gaze. Sam's back was turned to us. Only Amanda's face was visible. She's very pretty, I remarked, looking at Zach with amusement. He turned, met my gaze, and twitched slightly. My husband really likes that type. I said to him, I don't like that type. Zach replied without thinking. Our lines collided midair. I blinked, then laughed teasingly. The young prince's face flushed bright red. He covered his face with one hand. I was intrigued. Then what's your type? Zach was hopelessly shy, like a snow mochi stuffed too full with strawberry filling, tempting to squish. Young master? Ruby. He exhaled, still pink around the ears, then dropped his hand to look at me. Your husband liking that type. What do you mean by that? It was hard to define one's own type. But clearly, Amanda and I were on opposite ends of the spectrum. If he liked Amanda, well, the implication was obvious. I didn't answer. I just smiled and waved him off. Go eat. It's late. Zach frowned, looking slightly unhappy. After a moment, he sighed. Are you free next Friday? What for? I perked up, grinning. You finally taking the first step in our forbidden romance? Ruby. He said my name through gritted teeth, ears burning. I just want to thank you for taking care of me. I want to treat you to dinner. Just the two of us? Yeah. Food and desire, the two great cravings of mankind. A man and a woman alone at dinner. Young master, your intentions aren't pure. I reached out to pinch his cheek. He flinched and stumbled away as my fingers caught his dimple. He looked like a startled puppy. Forget it if you're busy. Zach turned away, sulking. Of course I'm free, I said with a smile. See you Friday. Chapter 11. I expected Amanda would come to see me. I just didn't expect she would come so quickly. Her message reached my phone while I was still working through some files. After reading it, I pushed the folder to my assistant. I'll be back in about half an hour. Host the first 5 minutes of the meeting for me. She nodded. I went downstairs, got in the car, and drove to the cafe Amanda had chosen, just a short distance from Sam's company. When she saw me, she immediately stood up. Miss Ruby. I nodded. She smiled softly. I remember you don't like coffee, so I ordered you a fruit tea. Is that okay? I inclined my head. You said you had something to tell me. What is it? Amanda looked at me, her eyes gradually turning red, then lowered her head and touched her still flat stomach. Miss Ruby, I'm pregnant. I grew up without a father, in a single-parent household. I know how much harder it is for a child to grow up without a dad. Miss Ruby, I hope my child can have a complete family. I took a sip of the fruit tea. I remember Sam has always been very careful with his precautions. The absence of an illegitimate child had been one of the biggest reasons I'd tolerated him this long. Amanda's tears fell onto the table, one by one, like stars scattered from the sky. That day, I didn't take the pill. Miss Ruby. She looked up at me, a beauty in tears, enough to make anyone's heart ache. It's my fault. I really love him too much. Miss Ruby, I'll only ever love Sam in this lifetime. I'd always thought Sam was foolish. The women he kept outside were foolish too. I'd barely started to think Amanda might be different, only to realize she was just another fool. I watched her cry with cold eyes, glanced at the time, and realized this meeting could end sooner than 30 minutes. Miss Amanda, I called her calmly. Do you know why I agreed to meet you today? She blinked, her eyes red, looking as pitiful as a little jade rabbit. My time is valuable. I usually don't get involved in Sam's messes. Plenty of people have messaged me before. I treated them all as spam. But you're different. You're beautiful. I rarely compliment anyone's looks, but she truly was a rare beauty. Beautiful enough that I was willing to spare half an hour for her. After all, beauties are always pleasant to the eye. I took a tissue, stood up, and gently wiped the tears from the corner of her eye. Please, use that face of yours to get Sam to divorce me. Will you? Chapter 12. Zach drove himself when he came to pick me up that day. I glanced at the car several times before giving up my composure. I give up trying to compete with rich people like you. I spend every day in the business world scheming this and that, while the crown prince was simply born with everything handed to him. Zach chuckled. Aren't you one of us too? I hesitated for a second. Can I sit in the front passenger seat? Sitting in the back makes it look like you're my driver. Sit in the front. I once heard someone say. I began. That eventually. We all become the kind of person we hate most. While driving, Zach asked. What kind of person do you hate? Rich people. The restaurant Zach picked had a great ambience. We sat by the window, chatting idly over dinner. Halfway through the meal, a waiter wheeled over a small cart with a birthday cake on it. I looked up, surprised. Zach met my eyes and smiled. Happy birthday. I didn't know what to get you, so I figured I'd treat you to dinner. I smiled back. In this circle, people are all seasoned players, and someone like Zach, with such a background, couldn't possibly lack awareness. He surely knew my motives weren't entirely pure. After all, the best way to close the gap between two strangers is always through subtle ambiguity. Yet Zach always walked right on the edge of that red line, neither stepping forward nor retreating. It wasn't that he didn't know what gift to buy. He just understood that compared to something lasting, a single meal keeps things comfortably ambiguous. But why? If you dislike something, just keep your distance. As the crown prince, Zach didn't have many people in the circle who could truly restrain or question him. I took a bite of the cake before I could speak. The lights in the restaurant suddenly dimmed. The piano in the center shifted to a deeply romantic tune. Several waiters came in holding bouquets, wheeling out a large cake with two lifelike little figurines on top. Propping my chin on my hand, I listened as the waiters wished the couple at the next table a happy anniversary, with blessings of everlasting love and happiness. The whole production was lavish. I sighed. How blissful. Zach looked over and paused. Expression complicated. Maybe your husband is preparing a surprise like that at home, too. He stumbled over the words. I looked at him with a smile. Zach held my gaze for a moment before abruptly looking away. You're really not curious about me at all. I teased him. I reached out and gently cupped his chin, guiding his gaze toward the happy couple. One of them was someone he'd seen before, Amanda. And the other, see? That's my husband, right there. Chapter 13. When Zach stood up, he almost knocked over the wine glass on the table. I reached out and grabbed his wrist. The young man froze mid-movement, lowering his gaze to meet my smiling eyes. The anger on his face softened by 3 degrees. For the first time, the crown prince didn't shake off my hand as if avoiding the plague. Propping my chin on my palm, I smiled at him. Want to have a drink with me? When I dropped Zach off at the hotel, the truth was I hadn't drunk much, and neither had he. It was only at the moment I was about to say goodbye that I suddenly heard him ask, Ruby, that first time we met, it was because of him that you went to the bar, wasn't it? Zach sat in the chair, looking straight into my eyes without flinching or dodging. His cool, pale skin had been tinged a faint pink by the alcohol, but his eyes, like a night sky strewn with stars, shone brightly, almost dazzling. From the day I met Zach, it felt as if he had always been rejecting people. Distant, aloof, a noble son raised under a strict and refined family tradition. And yet, only in front of me did he sometimes reveal a flicker of boyishness. Maybe it was the night being too beautiful. Maybe it was the intoxication. Everything about the moment told me, now is perfect for confiding our hearts. I stepped closer, reaching out. Zach didn't move away. I smiled. My marriage is a failure. I've always known he had someone else outside, as long as it didn't end up in my face. I let him do as he pleased. Everyone laughs at me for being foolish. He's out there playing around. And I'm still the only one who keeps wearing our wedding ring. That day at the bar, his vacation photos with someone else had been posted online. It was his birthday, and I was still stupidly waiting for him to come back so we could celebrate together. Turns out he already had someone else celebrating. I was so sad that day. The more I drank, the more I thought, why can't I? I looked at Zach, and my vision suddenly blurred. The moonlight was quiet. This kind of atmosphere has a magic that can turn lies into truth. Why am I the only one still holding on? I cupped Zach's face. He froze. Ruby, I said. And then I saw you. You're special. You're not like anyone else I know. You give me a sense of distance, of loneliness, of being neither close nor far. I've heard many people claim they're lonely, but I think your loneliness is real. It feels like deep down inside you, there's only yourself, and you're always pretending. I lowered my head. Our eyes locked. So close our breaths mingled. The young man's face slowly shifted from pink to red, like a pressure valve being turned tighter. My voice caught. Will you stay with me? Or, I leaned toward his ear and whispered softly, give me a chance to work with you. Chapter 14. I stepped back 2 paces, nearly bursting out laughing right in front of the crown prince. Zach's expression went through a series of dramatic changes before he finally caught on. His face was so dark it could drip ink. Ruby. The young man growled my name through clenched teeth. I responded cheerfully, yes? Stop watching so many tacky soap operas. Young master. I waved lazily. Get some rest. I'll pick you up in the morning for school. Zach didn't reply, just ground his teeth as he stared at me. I turned toward the door. Just as my hand touched the knob, he suddenly moved. A faint smell of alcohol wrapped around me, and his tall, imposing figure pressed close. In that split second of distraction, a hand with long, defined fingers slipped around my waist and landed on the lock. Click. Oh. Pushed too far. He bit the back of my neck lightly, more like venting than seduction, leaving behind a faint, itchy bite mark. Ruby. Zach's voice was hoarse. There was something hard to define in his tone, half anger, half indulgence. His other hand landed firmly on my waist. You win. I was pulled into a searing hot embrace. His voice brushed against my ear, clenched jawed and low. Whether it's me you want, or a chance to collaborate, fine. Take it. Just one condition. Tomorrow, you dump that deadweight husband of yours. Immediately. Chapter 15. Even a clay figurine has a temper. I lay on the bed, dazed and half drunk from the heat rising off my own skin. Moonlight poured down at the edge of the bed. I curled my fingers, like I was trying to grasp something, and someone with sharp eyes noticed and took the opportunity to slip their fingers between mine, lacing them together. The phone rang, cutting sharply through the quiet night. I flung off the hand holding mine and reached for the phone. The caller ID cleared the haze in my mind just a bit. Sam. My husband seemed to finally remember it was my birthday, and I hadn't gone home all day. Just as I was about to toss the phone aside, Zach beat me to it and answered the call. Sam's voice came through immediately. Ruby? Why haven't you come home? Go home to your mother. That's what I answered, in my head. That sneaky bastard beside me suddenly pressed down hard, making my words scatter like leaves in the wind. Sam, that walking wine bladder, was sharp when it came to this kind of thing. Ruby, what are you doing? I was just about to speak when Zach abruptly hung up the call. Sam's shouting was cut off mid-rant. I looked up at Zach. The young man lowered his head, only for me to slap a hand over his mouth. From the way you phrased your demand earlier, I thought, what a cliché setup. I squinted at him with a grin. Young master, I didn't know you were into bullhorned husband dramas. He bit my palm, then he pulled my hand away and bit down on my shoulder. The crown prince's voice was dark and dangerous. I'm a true love believer. Damn it. Chapter 16. Sometimes, being young and full of energy is a curse. When I woke up, the crown prince was still asleep, clinging to me like an octopus. I pried his hand away and got out of bed quietly. There were over 40 missed calls on my phone, all from Sam. On the drive, I passed by a shopping mall and, after a moment of thought, pulled over. By the time I got home, it was nearly noon. When I opened the door, I saw Sam slouched on the living room couch, looking disheveled, clothes wrinkled, hair messy. His phone was lying beside him. There was a cake on the coffee table too. I walked over and reached out to smooth his hair. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand. Sam opened his bloodshot eyes. Ruby. His voice was stiff, even a little hoarse. Where were you last night? Who were you with? He paused, suddenly realizing something, then reached for my hand again. Your ring? Ruby, where's your wedding ring? Some young master took it off. I pouted slightly, pulled my hand back, and smiled at Sam. I brought you a present. Under his confused gaze, I pulled out a paper shopping bag from the mall. From it, I took out a hat, bright, vivid green, a very green hat. Tada. I gently placed it on Sam's head and stepped back a few paces to admire my work. It suits you perfectly. Sharp taste. As expected of me, Sam looked like he was going to faint from sheer rage. He yanked the hat off and slammed it to the ground. We're all smart people here. He stared at me, eyes dark and heavy. Who is it? You're planning to start trouble? For the sake of our marriage, I suggest you don't. Even if you want to cause him trouble, he won't be that easily troubled. Who is it? He wouldn't let it go. I smiled. Zach. The name dropped like a bomb. Sam froze for a second, stunned. When he snapped out of it, he grabbed my hand. Ruby, you're lying, aren't you? Was he doubting that someone like Zach would be interested in a married woman? Or was he refusing to believe I'd ever betray our marriage? I just smiled and pulled out a folder from my bag. A divorce agreement. It had been ready for a while now. I'd been waiting a long time. Amanda just wasn't very effective. I sat across from him. Take a look. The division of assets is simple. What's yours is yours. What's mine is mine. I'm not taking advantage of you. I'd prefer if you signed it today. The sooner we get divorced, the better. Sam didn't move. Ruby. We don't have to do this. If it's Amanda you mind, I can. Sam. I cut him off. Expression calm but firm. I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm informing you. If there are any issues with the contract, we can revise it. But the divorce is non-negotiable. Ruby. I won't. For the sake of our marriage, I'd rather we didn't have to go this far. I stared directly at him and said one word. Falsified financial reports. Sam's expression changed instantly. Mr. Sam. I smiled. You wouldn't want the media to find out about that, would you? Chapter 17. When Sam went to the office, he took the divorce agreement with him. I knew that meant things were basically settled. Once I had some free time, I checked my phone, only to see that I had been bombarded with another round of texts. Where are you? Did you go to the office? Are you busy? Something urgent? You left so early. Why didn't you wake me up? I wanted to have breakfast with you. Are you pretending nothing happened? Crying cat emoji. I took a photo of the green hat still lying on the floor and sent it to him. I was up early to deliver gifts. The Crown Prince. Legendary. Chapter 18. Sam's company was facing a severe cash shortfall. One of his senior execs had embezzled a large sum of money. If this kind of scandal broke out, the company would be on the brink of collapse. Even though the company was old and reputable, it couldn't withstand his habit of appointing people based on connections. That particular executive? Some distant relative of Sam's. Sam didn't dare hand him over, so he had to find a way, quietly, to plug the hole himself. I was worried that if I pushed Sam too hard, he'd drag me down with him just to save face. During the 30-day cooling-off period for the divorce, I still lived at home, going to work as usual. Sam, in a move clearly meant to provoke me, brought Amanda back home. They acted all lovey-dovey in front of me like I didn't exist. Now and then, my eyes would drift toward Amanda's stomach. At just over a month, there was no visible change yet. Amanda would always avoid my gaze. I knew she still hadn't told Sam she was pregnant. The day our divorce was finalized was bright and sunny. I took Sam's car to the Civil Affairs Bureau. At a red light. During those quiet 10 seconds, the atmosphere in the car was suffocatingly heavy. Then Sam spoke. No sarcasm, no bitterness, just a rare calmness. Ruby, he said, if I'd never gotten involved with anyone else from the beginning, would we have been able to stay together? The truth is, Sam and I did have a relatively happy phase. Maybe it lasted 3 months, maybe even less. I don't remember clearly. From the moment the first woman showed up, the parade of mistresses never stopped. The first time I caught him red-handed, he sobered up and looked at me with a gentle smile. Ruby, he said, I hope you won't say anything to spoil the mood. I smiled back at him, swallowing the rising anger. I didn't ask who she was. I didn't ask why. I just said, don't drink too much. It's bad for your health. Funny how people start reminiscing right before they lose something. But it's not real regret. Even if given another chance, he'd make the same choices. I didn't answer him. Chapter 19. It wasn't until the red divorce certificate landed in my hands that I finally felt at ease. As we stepped out the door, Sam's footsteps faltered for a second. Ruby, we would've. I suddenly said. Sam froze. I smiled at him. We would've. If you'd never cheated, if it had always just been the two of us, we would've grown old together. Maybe we'd have had a smart little daughter. She would've inherited the company. We could've stepped back, traveled the world together. Maybe at the end, when we were gray and wrinkled, we'd still look at each other and calmly promise to find each other in the next life. I took a step forward, smiling softly. I reached out and adjusted his tie, just like I used to, back when we were newlyweds. For a second, Sam's expression cracked with emotion. Ruby, but you wouldn't have. I stepped back, avoiding his hand as he reached for me. My voice was cold as ice. You wouldn't. Sam, I know you too well. You're fake, selfish, arrogant, unfaithful, irresponsible, and full of empty words. His face darkened, slowly but surely. I know exactly who you are, Sam, and that's exactly why I married you. I smiled faintly. Enjoy it while it lasts. You're about to find out just how vicious and cold-blooded your ex-wife can really be. Sam stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. His voice dropped, cold and poisonous. Ruby, he said, a woman like you will never be loved by anyone. Not truly. The kind of thing only an ex-lover could whisper. Intimate venom disguised as a farewell. But really, who cares? Losing love is like a fish losing its bicycle. Suddenly, the blaring of a luxury car horn split the air. I turned my head. The crown prince was parked up in a supercar, glaring like he'd been made to wait too long. I took a step back and gave Sam a genuine, heartfelt goodbye wave. Goodbye. Chapter 20. When I got in the car, Zach leaned over to fasten my seatbelt. He stiffened his neck and didn't look at me once. I leaned in and bit him on the cheek. The crown prince jerked in surprise, nearly banging his head on the roof. His ears turned pink. You. Just copying you. I grinned. Jealous? He huffed with obvious bitterness. You're divorced. But still fixing his tie. I kissed his cheek. Relax. The love was dead long ago. Zach looked up at me, his eyes full of unspoken sulking and reluctant affection. He looked like a puppy that wanted to stay mad but couldn't help wagging its tail. I pulled out my phone and made a call to Sam's biggest rival. After all, I promised Sam I wouldn't leak anything to the media. But what other people do, well, that's not my business, is it? Chapter 21. News broke about Sam's company. Negative rumors spread like wildfire. Sam was running around putting out fires, desperate to save face, but still refused to admit to anything. Until one afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door. Beaming. Boss, she said, they've issued new stock. The fish has taken the bait. Chapter 22. When it comes to people you never want to see again, there's no such thing as goodbye. Sam's company barely survived the first round of media fallout and held its shareholder meeting. The conference room was bright and tidy. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, you could see the people rushing about below at a glance. I took a moment to admire the view and sighed deeply. The world really is just one giant Chinese breakfast wrap. The crown prince beside me, bundled in a cap and mask, insisted on coming along. Okay, let me buy you one later. Footsteps echoed from outside the room. Shareholders began filing in, and then came the last set of footsteps in the corridor. So familiar. Just like years ago, before we were even married, when he'd rush out the moment he heard I was at the office. Back then, his footsteps sounded just like this. Quick, anxious. Outside, the assistant's voice came softly. Sam, the one sitting at the head of the table is the primary shareholder. The one who just bought. The wheels of the chair rotated slightly, just enough to shift across the thick carpet with the faintest sound. I turned around, both hands resting on the table, smiling leisurely at Sam. Long time no see. Sam, who would have thought we'd meet again so soon? Sam's expression almost cracked. Chapter 23. When we shook hands, he used 90% of his strength. I didn't hold back either. My freshly manicured nails did all the dirty work. The meeting didn't go smoothly, mainly because I was enthusiastically pointing out every flaw in Sam's operation. Can't blame me, though. His company was practically made of holes. Several times, when facing my pointed questions, Sam's face nearly contorted beyond repair. The darker his expression grew, the better my mood got. After the meeting, shareholders began filing out. One of them wanted to make polite conversation with me, but Sam intercepted. The man blocked my way with his tall frame. He looked down at me, eyes stormy, face dark enough to rain. "Ruby," he growled, "you really are shameless, disgusting." I reached out and stopped Zach, who was clearly ready to charge in. Then, calmly, I patted Sam's shoulder like I was brushing away dust that wasn't there. My tone was light, mocking, even. "Oh, Sam, that's where you're wrong again. In business, there's no such thing as shameless. If you can't hold on to your company." My smile didn't reach my eyes anymore. "Then don't blame others for taking it. The business world is ruthless. It's a field of wolves. No one knows who'll bite whom once they smell blood in the water. And I told you, didn't I? I'm a businesswoman." Chapter 24. When I left Sam's company and sat down in the car, I suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure at the entrance. A hand held mine. The crown prince had taken off his cap, the strands of hair at his forehead slightly disheveled. Eyes lowered. He held a disinfectant wipe and carefully cleaned my hand, one fingertip at a time. Outside the car window, a beauty stood in tears, stopped by the security guards at the gate. Amanda looked much more haggard now, yet even in that state she had a kind of fragile beauty. "Please, let me in. I just want to say a few words to Sam. It won't take long. I'm begging you." Her pretty face was streaked with tears, but the guards were unmoved. "Miss, without permission we cannot let you in. Please, let me see him just once," she pleaded, nearly dropping to her knees. At that moment, the censor door slid open. Sam strode out, face dark. Amanda froze, then instantly lunged toward him. Sam, why won't you see me? What did I do wrong?" The guards hurried to stop her. "Miss, please don't do this." Sam stood where he was, his eyes sweeping over her face, utterly indifferent. "Next time, I don't want to see her at the company entrance again." "Sam, you can't." Amanda bit her lip. "I'm carrying your child." Sam's expression didn't change. "Then get rid of it. Or if you want to be a single mother, that's your choice." It was as if the last thread of strength had been pulled from Amanda. She stopped struggling, staring blankly as Sam got into his car, leaving her standing there, hollow. I watched the scene to the end, then rolled up the window. "Let's go." Chapter 25. The car stopped at the company entrance. I reached for the seatbelt buckle, but a hand pressed mine down. Someone leaned over and covered my lips with a kiss. There was a softness to it that didn't allow escape. The hand I'd tried to free was caught instead. Something warm and solid slipped onto my ring finger, a ring, clasped firmly around me. When we parted, the crown prince's ears were flushed a smoky pink. I opened my hand to admire it and found it was a matching ring. "Claiming your territory?" His face turned even redder, like a child guarding candy in his hands. "I can't just keep following you with no name, no title." I tilted my head to admire his beauty and smiled. "Aren't you afraid? Afraid I might still look for someone else?" "Young master." My voice softened. "Business people value profit, not permanence." Zach met my eyes without flinching. In his gaze, a tiny reflection of me trembled. He smiled and asked calmly, "Would you?" Hard to say. My moral boundaries have always been adaptable. High with the high, low with the low. Then what should I do? The crown prince lowered his voice, almost troubled. "Luckily, I have lots and lots of money." So cute it almost hurt. I nearly burst out laughing. Eyes curved like crescents. His hand, caught in mine, gleamed with a matching ring on his elegant fingers. I lowered my head, kissed the ring, then I'll give myself to you, I suppose. Extra, dog nose. Chapter 1. Zach was in his second year of middle school when a friend dragged him out to the field to watch a high school race. The girls' 800-meter final was in full swing, a crowd buzzing at the finish line. His friend squeezed through the front row, pulling Zach along. Above the deafening cheers, One name stood out more than the rest. Ruby. Zach raised an eyebrow. Who's Ruby? His friend pointed at the girl running far in front. There, that's her. You really don't know her? Do I have to? Zach countered. The friend rubbed his nose. Not really, but she's famous around school. Top 3 in grades every semester. Student council. Pretty face. And people say she's really nice. Zach didn't comment. The shouts around them grew louder. The girl at the head of the pack was closing in on the finish line. Zach looked up, met the girl's smiling eyes under the sun. Her ponytail swayed and swayed. Ruby's face was flushed pink from the heat. Peach. The word popped into Zach's head automatically. Before he could process the thought, the girl tore through the finish line. Amid the thunder of cheers, she couldn't slow her momentum and ran straight toward the crowd. Zach reacted instinctively. He was knocked back by the force. But luckily, the prized 800-meter champion landed right in his arms. The warm, soft weight against his chest was far more startling than the sting from the scrape on his elbow. And in that instant, as his body temperature shot up, his mind registered only one thing. She smelled like camellias. Chapter 2. Zach rarely dreamed. He usually slept like a rock. So when he woke up gasping from a dream, sweat breaking out, he almost scared himself. It hadn't even been a nightmare. If anything, it was idyllic. For the first time, his teenage thoughts had stumbled up to the edge of puberty. In the dream, a girl simply held his hand as they walked slowly along a park path. Just before he woke, she'd smiled, slipped into his arms, and tipped her face up to kiss the dimple in his cheek. Sunlight filtered softly through the layered leaves, landing on her face. Delicate brows, a mischievous smile, bright eyes. Ruby's face. When your body crosses into adolescence before your mind, the result is that in the very moment you wake, you find a flag already raised, standing at full salute. Zach clapped a hand over his face, cursing himself as dirty and low. The family he came from, centuries of legacy, might not have been an actual scholarly clan, but at least it was known for upright family values. Gold piled on jade, a young heir brimming with confidence, and for the first time in his life, he utterly despised himself. Chapter 3. Zach was tricked into a club by his troublemaking friends on his 21st birthday. It wasn't until he saw the crowd of pretty girls packed into the private room that he realized he'd been set up. His friends sat off to the side, watching the show. The girls swarmed him, cutting off all escape routes. Standing in the middle of the circle, Zach's ears buzzed. His brain felt like it was one breath away from exploding. Mostly, he was furious with his so-called friends. He finally found an excuse to go to the bathroom and slipped away. Zach was calling one of his friends from the hallway when a girl intercepted him, just to confess her feelings. 20-plus years of proper upbringing helped him push down the irritation and decline politely. The young girl, blushing, ran off covering her face. On the other end of the line, his friend laughed gleefully. More girls just went looking for you. Bro, you're done next time. Zach replied coolly. You try that again. You're finished. Only then did his friend realize the young master was not in the mood and quickly softened, apologizing and trying to calm him down. Zach kept the call going, listening to the guy try to explain. Then, someone suddenly wrapped their arms around his waist from behind. The scent of camellia flowers spread over him like a spell, instantly reactivating all of his senses. And then, right by his ear, a voice with the soft dust of years on it. Yet so familiar. Like an old friend he'd just spoken to yesterday. Zach's adrenaline surged, like two 6'3" linebackers were pounding on his chest from the inside. The voice whispered teasingly at his ear, breath as soft as silk. Young master, I'm not like those other girls. I'm a married woman. The deer who hadn't shown up to work in ages almost crashed headfirst into his heart. Chapter 4. Zach was inexperienced, but luckily, he was young. Luckily, he was passionate. Luckily, he had endless energy and raw strength. And, most of all, under the pressure of moral codes, social expectations, and personal restraint, he finally broke free, letting loose a flood of repressed desire, possessiveness, and just a touch of dark jealousy. Zach lowered his head. One plum blossom after another bloomed across the snow. All the way down, the room was dark, no lights on, only the sound of two bodies breathing in tangled rhythm echoed like thunder in the quiet night. Suddenly, a pair of hands cupped his face. Zach looked up. Ruby's hair was spread across the white sheets. Moonlight spilled into her eyes. Her lashes were wet with tears from sheer physical reaction. Her gem-like eyes shimmered in the dim room, as if soaked in starlight and tears, dazzling and alive. She met his gaze, eyes curving with a playful smile. "Are you a dog?" Zach, in the least appropriate moment, remembered a childhood nursery rhyme from his innocent days. Snow fell, and the little painters came out to play. The chicks painted bamboo leaves. The dogs painted plum blossoms. Dogs painted plum blossoms. A light chuckle escaped his throat. He lowered his head and kissed her between the brows, soft and ticklish like wind-brushed petals. The scent of camellia clung to the air. She asked playfully. Zach answered, dead serious. "Possibly."